Welcome to another episode of the Embassy of Food. This episode will be in English because we're only having international guests. The Embassy of Food is part of the World Design Embassies, a regular part of the Dutch Design Week. Normally the embassies are all physical, located at the week, but due to Corona, we had to switch to the TV station that we're in now, and we will have all the talks and all the debates in this TV station, so only virtual. Today we are crossing borders and zooming in on 3 international projects, all related to food and design. Each project deals with food and design in a very unique way, and each project is also very locally based, but with a strong international importance. We will have 3 main projects that we're discussing today. The first from Palestine, illustrated by Vivian Sansour. The second from Spain, illustrated by Mario Mimosa and Maria Fuentebro. And the third last one is from Istanbul by Mariana Pestana and Billy Muraben. And they're part of the curatorial team of the Istanbul Biennale. We go quickly to the first speaker. That's Vivian. Vivian, if I'm correct, you're in Bethlehem at this moment. You're the founder of the Palestine Heirloom Seed Library and the, let me see, the Traveling Kitchen Project. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can see you. Good to see you, Vivian.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I think you have beautiful projects that you have been curating and designing. Thanks so much for presenting them today to us. I think you're going to talk a little bit about the Palestine Heirloom Seed Library. What I will do, I'll give you the floor to do the presentation, and we'll have a short Q&A afterwards. So go right ahead.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. I would like to first thank Jorn for introducing me, and Judith, the curator, and everybody else at the Dutch Design Week for giving me this platform. Of course, as we all would have loved to be there together and in person, this has not been possible. So here we are. Trying to make the untouchable touchable now through this interestingly designed platform. And today I learned that you can actually do a presentation and have a clicker on your smartphone, which I thought was quite innovative, and I had never heard of it. So this is my first time. And it's pretty exciting for me. But I, oftentimes when people invite me to design biennales and stuff, I'm always just, wondering why. And then I started to think more closely about it in recent months. And I realized that actually it is very fitting, because the decisions we make today in what we eat and how we produce what we eat is truly shaping the design of the world we're living in. And this, for me, is really important also because of the way I think about why we accept things that are intolerable oftentimes. Like, why should I accept that the only thing available in the market is terrible agribusiness food, for example? And this one was really powerful for me a few years ago, not just because I like to eat nice whole foods, but also because the foods of my childhood, the foods of my culture were disappearing. And I was doing my research here in Palestine on an issue completely not related to, and as I was trying to reconnect with my culture, I found that all the things that I missed, that I wanted to have, were disappearing. And this was really the beginning of the Palestine Heirloom Seed Library, although the journey really started first without thinking that it would be anything more than just me looking for the things that I love. And so it all started with a carrot. And well, it started with a couple of things, but the carrot was definitely one of them. It was during the season of the purple carrots here. And this is an image of them. And we make a very delicious dish, which is famous for the Jerusalemite community, but it is a dish that has kind of spread Palestine, and these delicious purple carrots, and we stuff them with rice and meat, and we cook them with carob sauce and tamarind sauce. And I really wanted to make some. And a few years ago, I was going into the markets trying to find it, but could not find it. It was a bit difficult to find. You're more able to find them today, and I kept asking people, do you know where I can get it? Do you know where I can have it? And finally, I went to this guy who told me, you should go and ask this guy at the big market. He might have them. And I went to this guy and I said, hey, they sent me here. He had this beautiful vegetable stall, and he had a very nice tablecloth, and on top of it were his vegetables, but there were no purple carrots. And I said, but people sent me here to look for purple carrots. And he said, well, I don't have them. I have some. I'm like, what, do you have them or you don't have them? It's a yes or no question. And so he lifted this tablecloth, and underneath this tablecloth was this crate of purple carrots. And I said, well, you have them. Why don't you just, sell me some? And he said, well, somebody ordered them. And so I understood that, for me, the process of looking for just a crop that I loved as a child was more like a drug deal, because I was trying to negotiate with this guy. Give me 2, give me 3, just give me some of it, whatever you want. Anyway, he gave me these that are in the pictures here. And we made a deal. It was very expensive. But even though I was so much tempted to eat them, I felt like they were so precious, and I wanted to be able to produce them the next year without having to depend on somebody else. And so I went home and I dug the ground and I put them in the ground with the hopes that they will sprout and they will flower and that they will give seeds so that I can plant them again and again for basically the future. And so kind of how the seed library started, it was just my desire to follow what I love and to find it. I couldn't handle the idea that things that I loved were disappearing. But the truth is, I realized very quickly that what I'm doing is hardly innovative, that most Palestinian old ladies, they have seed libraries of their own, and they don't look as fancy as mine maybe does, but they all these ancient seeds live in these old chocolate tin boxes that have these seeds in them. And they become little seed libraries in every little cupboard somewhere hidden away. And so the journey for me to find the varieties was really a journey to find myself and to reconnect to my own culture, and to also discover in my own self, like, what does the future that I imagine look like? What is the vision I have for the future? And how do we combine the old knowledge with new innovation and the new life that we're living, but also not just the new living, but also the life that we want to be part of? Because the truth is, the world we are in today is the product of other people's imaginations. And, well, some of them had really terrible ideas about the future. But a lot of people obviously have great ideas, and everybody is really special in coming up with who they are and offering something. This is a picture of an older man that I did named Hamoudi, actually. He's 104 years old, and I went to visit him to learn about wheat because I was looking for wheat varieties, ancient wheat varieties, because Palestine actually part of the center of diversity for wheat and barley. So wheat and barley developed here as a process of someone who dared to imagine a wild grass would one day become this delicious and big shaft that will become wheat and we will make bread with it. So to think that it was the hard work and the imagination of someone who kept selecting over and over again that gave the world literally bread makes one wonder, like, where are all these wheat varieties now don't see? Like, we only have 2 or 3 varieties that we eat from hundreds of varieties that used to exist before. So I went to discuss with Haj Hamoudi here. I wanted to learn about had disappeared and to try wheat varieties, particularly one that's called Kaf al-Rahman, which has such a beautiful name. It means the palm of the merciful. And the fact that they actually have all these beautiful names for different crops also fascinates me and fascinates me still. And as I was speaking to him, he really like got me to understand that, you know, what I'm doing is something very personal, in that, you know, it's true that I'm sharing seeds with farmers and I'm working with a lot of people, but I'm actually trying to also find myself and understand my own agency in this work, this planet. And so the search for these seeds really came as a result of having lots of cups of coffee and tea with different people and just connecting and having conversations in order to things that, you know, sometimes I didn't even know existed. So, for example, these little seeds are the seeds of the Jadui watermelon. And the Jadui watermelon is another story that really kind of got me to do this work. Because 10 years ago, I was living in the north, in the villages, and I was talking to farmers about their agricultural practices and writing for an olive oil company. And every time I interviewed anybody, they would always mention this Jadui. Sometimes they wouldn't say what it is. They would just call it by its name, which is Jadui. And Jadui is a watermelon. It's a watermelon that everybody seems to have a story about, especially in the north. And so some women would even say to me, you know, oh, I gave birth in the Jadui watermelon field, especially women who are elderly in their 80s and 70s. And then, you know, there were men who would tell me so proudly that they used to ship the watermelons to Damascus, to Istanbul, even to Lebanon. They would put them in trucks and they would go with their fathers. And then many people talked about hiding in the watermelon fields during the war. So I was just so fascinated by this watermelon that everybody was talking about. And so when I asked, where is this watermelon? They would all say, well, we're asking about the dinosaur. This watermelon doesn't exist anymore. That really just completed my heart, in the sense that how can something that has such significance, such a big story for so many people, disappear like that? And what does it mean also to lose such an important part of our cultural practice and our cultural heritage? And so I started to ask about this watermelon, and the more I asked, oh, this is a little confusing here, sorry. The more I asked, the more people kept saying that, you know, it's not available, you know, you can't find it anymore, nobody's growing it anymore. And so years passed, and I kind of just gave up on finding it until I met a lovely person named Khadr Abu Ghattas, who later became now a dear colleague and friend. And I said, they told me, a lot about seeds, and I'm wondering, did you ever hear of a watermelon called jaddu? And he goes, oh, the jaddu, you are looking for the jaddu? I have it. So he opens this old drawer, the everything drawer that had hammers, old uh, prescription bottles, you name it, nails, screwdrivers, as you can see in the picture. And he starts to pull out these seeds, one seed at a time. And then he actually put them on the table and said, you want the Jaddui watermelon? Here, take it. Nobody did anyway. And I always say that this was such a bittersweet moment for me because I was so happy to find the seeds, but I was so heartbroken to hear him say nobody wants it. Because I mean, what does it mean when we don't want who we are? And so the journey of actually starting the seed library started with these seeds, literally, in the sense that I took these seeds that were 7 years old and I wasn't sure if they were going to be vital. And I started to work with farms so that we can grow them in different places in hopes that we will get a couple of watermelons and hopefully have more seed that we can share. And actually, that is exactly what we did. And we started to share these seeds, and I shared with different people in different places. Obviously, as you saw, we didn't have a lot of them. In the south here, they didn't do very well. In the north, they did really well, and it was great because now we have we have a good amount of seeds that we're sharing with farmers, and we got to grow Jaddui again. This is a farmer that I met in the valley, and I was really fascinated when I met him because he works in date farming. But when we were talking, he told me his last name, and it's Jaddui, which is the name of the watermelon. And even in this Jordan Valley, people used to grow this watermelon, but today, many factors, including basically the thirst that the Jordan Valley is experiencing because Israel has cut off their water resources. They're resorting to more with crops like these dates and other crops that don't require as much water. And so it's really amazing to understand that these seed varieties are not some just inanimate objects that we just, or things that we just eat. There's so much literally what we eat and in part of who we are, in our names, in our cultural practice. And to meet someone whose name is Jaddui tells you everything, that these are not just things that people took very lightly. They really cherished and appreciated their seed varieties. And for us, also as an indigenous population here who is constantly under immediate attack and threat for our survival, having these seeds available to us also is very, very important. And one of the many reasons is, like I told you, about the water shortage we suffer. And that's not because we don't have water, but because water is not equally shared here. These watermelons actually grow without irrigation. So like many varieties we have, speaking of design, I mean, this is some genius design of our ancestors. They designed a few varieties of different zucchinis, tomatoes, okra, watermelon, you name it, wheat, that grows literally with zero irrigation. And this watermelon, for example, is one of these crops, and we call them all Baal crop. And Baal refers to the Canaanite deity of fertility. And so imagine, from literally thousands of years ago, we still use the same word today to describe these seed varieties that are the product of this genius selection, pure act of art and science, where someone had to have the imagination, which is art, to select these varieties, and then the practice of science through observation to keep selecting them until we have them today. And the jaddu'i is actually one of those wonderful crops, because we put them in the ground at a certain time and we wait for them to basically grow. They live off of the moisture retained in the soil after the rainy season. These are summer crops, and from the dew. So imagine when there's even no rain anymore, a lot of heat, and we still have these vegetables and fruits growing. And why this is so important? Well, obviously for us, and I think for everybody around the world, when we're designing our future food and how food is very important to be local also, we understand that food is also important to have autonomy. To be autonomous in your ability to produce your own food is actually political power. This is the launch of our the first launch of our series. And so after I basically started working with different farmers to grow these different varieties, I started to work with teachers who work with students in different levels in school. And I want to actually engage young people in also like becoming people who who carry this knowledge forward. So for example, the word for student in Arabic is talib, and talib literally means the one who makes requests. And so I asked the teachers to ask their students to basically make the request from the elders in their communities to teach them, to tell them about these biocultural stories. And so a lot of the things that we brought together in this launch was the stories of students who actually went to talk to their elders. And many teachers actually resisted in the beginning. One of them who works with kids in refugee camps who have been severed from, their rural life. They've been severed from their villages. They've been displaced. Their grandparents have been displaced. They were able to actually connect to with their grandmothers and grandfathers. And one story that I love to share is one student who actually said, I never sat down to really have a conversation with my grandmother. I didn't know that where I come from is a village that was very famous for so much of the varieties that we eat today. This is an image of the wheat called Abu Samra. And I fell completely in love with this wheat when I first saw it, partly because it has these beautiful dark whiskers. And asked about it, it was also one of the crops that, people said, oh, we just don't grow it as much anymore. People don't ask for it anymore. And that's because commercial wheat has taken over, where, you grow one variety of commercial for everything, for bread, for animal feed, this idea of uniformity that comes with agribusiness. But actually, this wheat is called by many, it's Abu Samra, which literally means in Arabic, the dark and handsome one. And I was so fascinated by this, and I started to talk to more people about it, and a lot of people to it as this long lost. They talk about Abu Samra, dark and handsome. And so this is one of the varieties that we've been working to recover and to propagate, and we have been propagating it with several farmers and also growing it ourselves. And one of the things that I am very excited about is this year we were able to create a song with a young and amazing up-and-coming musician named Zaid Hilal. You can actually look up this song. And the song is a love story about this long-lost love, which is this Abu Samra wheat that's coming back. And it's a kind of hip song, and I wanted to collaborate on something that creates excitement by young people about an ancient crop. Because as would tell me, okay, we're growing these ancient varieties, but then what? You know, we need to live. People need to know what they are. And I understood that people really needed to get excited also about them and to desire them. And so it's been really amazing because some farmers who initially were like, we don't want to grow it, it's not economically feasible. Since we released the song and since, you know, we started telling this story, more and more people are calling farmers and farmers are calling us wanting this delicious and amazing wheat.
Vivian, can you hear me?
Yes.
We're running a little bit short on time, so and it's a beautiful project, but I still would like to ask you to round up a little bit.
Sure, sorry. Well, this is Khaldoun, and he is a farmer who just started again growing the dark and handsome one. And I'm very excited to share that he has committed to it now. This is our traveling kitchen, which travels around with the idea. It comes apart, fits in the car, and we just basically cook to bring conversation. I will wrap it up by just sharing with everybody that we are excited that we actually have these seeds packets are available online for people in Europe and the United States or anywhere in the world that want to buy these seeds and grow them in their community. They're available on Disarming Design platform. And also that I wanted to just say that this year we did something pretty incredible. And I talked a little bit about the shortage of water, and because we have a huge shortage of water all the time, we decided to build a cistern. And in the process of building the cistern, we dug the earth, obviously, to build it, and we found these gorgeous rock formations that have been crystallized. And it was such an amazing discovery because I got to understand how ancient our soil is, but not only how ancient the soil is, that all of this here was actually ocean a million years ago. I really wonder about our ridiculous and absurd notions of nationalism and the way we've designed the world in such a way that separates us that rather than brings us together. And so I actually decided to go inside the cistern, and I made a very short film for Storefront Gallery in New York, which I'm happy to share with you here.
Nice. I think we're going to look at the video.
A few more months from now, the rain will come. This cistern will fill up. The plants will drink, we will drink, and I will baptize my skin in its very waters. And we will survive, the way we have before. Another summer, another unjust war, another cruel reality. You see, 100 million years ago, we were ocean. And 100 million years later, we are fighting not to become a desert. 100 million tries and 100 million defiant acts, 100 million seeds and 100 million plants and 100 million trees. and 100 million of us, and we will survive.
Vivian, I think it's a beautiful project. I think it's great how it started really from a personal fascination and turned into something of big importance for your cultural heritage, and I think also has a very strong political dimension. I would love to talk more with you about the project, but unfortunately we're really out of time. So I'd like to invite you to visit the Dutch Design Week next year to illustrate the project even more and to talk about it, and maybe it has already evolved. But again, congratulations on the beautiful project, and I hope to see you next year.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That was Vivian from Palestine. We're going now quickly to Spain, to a project that has been realized by Mario Mimoso and Maria Fuentembro. We're going to look at, I think, a clip first, but I see you guys already are in Spain. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes.
Good seeing you. I think we start with a film, and then we talk a little bit more about your project.
Yeah.
Hello everyone, we are Maria and Mario, founders of Sharp and Sour, and today we would like to talk about one of our projects called Urban Foraging. Urban Foraging is a speculative design project about the disconnection from the source of our food and how would it be like to forage our food from our city limits.
So yeah, before we dig into it, we would like to tell you a bit more about what we do. So Sharp and Sour is a multidisciplinary design studio focused on food and futures. Our core philosophy has always been to go beyond the status quo and question everything around us. So we think actually food is a really powerful medium to do that, to generate debates and talks around important topics such as our society, our planet, or different ways of living. So yeah, it was actually during one of these talks that Mario and I were having that we came up with the concept of urban foraging. We were talking about how disconnected we actually are from the source of our food, how little do we know about ingredients, and how did this happen so quickly, like in just a few generations. And we know this is a very broad topic, but we try to summarize it in 5 main points. So yeah, let's start with the presentation. First of all, busy schedules. The millennial generation, which on average encompasses half of the workforce, is actually the generation that works the most hours, which doesn't leave much time to manage your vegetable garden, as you can imagine. Also, these busy schedules make delivery and ready-made meals a convenient and fast option that totally fits with this fast-paced lifestyle. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that all this online delivery service has skyrocketed the last few years. Also, let's face it, organic produce is expensive. Not expensive per se, but just more expensive compared to their large-scale counterparts that basically can't afford to cut costs by underpaying all the actors involved in the supply chain. Farmer markets would be maybe the obvious choice here, but again, busy schedules and also distance make this option less suitable for everyone. Also, the exponential growth of city physically distances us from the countryside and the agricultural areas. And normally the green areas left in the city are scarce, and most of us didn't have our own garden. And lastly, a bit of an obvious one, but we wanted to mention it anyways. Besides from being faster and more convenient to buy at the supermarket, it's also more comfortable just to get your meat patty without to witness the slaughter itself. So for most of us, it's just easier not to see the reality behind our food.
So why should this matter to us? We wanted to start this part of the talk by stating that the right to food is a basic human right, and actually, according to the definition of the Declaration of Human Rights, the right to food is the right of people to feed themselves in dignity, implying that sufficient food is available, that people have the means to access it, and that it adequately meets the individual's dietary needs. And what is important here is the word themselves, because the right to food is not about charity, but about ensuring that everybody can feed themselves in dignity. Only in the European Union, more than 7% of citizens cannot afford a quality meal regularly. This might not be a lot as a figure, but it's equal to 36 million people starving in the so-called first world only. Ironically, around 20% of the food produced each year in Europe goes to waste. And more than half of this is produced by households. And this is a lot, and clearly shows that we don't really care about wasting food, even in a context like the previous one. But if we add the numbers to the waste produced in the food supply chain and production, this number grows up to 80%. This, among many other reasons, happens because we are not willing to buy an ugly tomato or a too twisted pepper, just because we see food as industrial products and not as products of our land. And as you know, one of the main issues also related to waste is plastic packaging. Only in 2018, we generated more than 8 billion kilos of plastic packaging, only for food and drinks. This is equal to more than 8 million cars in weight. And again, this is only in Europe. And you could think this is just a small fraction of the total food packaging we consume, but sadly, it's not. From the total, plastic makes up to 60%. This might not be surprising if we think that only 10 companies produce most of our daily food products. Therefore, the need for packaging that helps food travel large distances and stay edible is a direct consequence of this oligopoly. And keep in mind that if our food is produced only by a few companies, we lose control over prices, means of production, transportation, packaging, and the type of products available. But our disconnection from the source of our food has also an effect on our knowledge, especially but not only as kids. A study in the UK found that 10% of school kids think that tomatoes grow underground, while another 33% think that cheese came from plants. And while this may seem funny, how many of us do actually know when veggies are in season? Because we think Brits are not along here.
So after taking into account all these issues, we started thinking how disconnected we are from ingredients, how immersed we are in this city bubble, and how little do we actually grow in our urban surroundings. So we made ourselves this question. What if the only source of food available was the one that grows within the city limits? And in order to answer to this, we went all over Barcelona and foraged whatever food we were able to find there. We went to parks, gardens, avenues, and basically explored the streets looking for ingredients. In the end, we collected quite a lot of things, actually. We found seeds, leaves, even mushrooms, fruits, herbs, and flowers. And then we cataloged them in order to build up the dishes. We carried out some tests to take out the most of each ingredient. And then finally, we came up with 3 dystopian recipes that would make a 3-course meal. So we would have a first course, a second course, and a dessert. So let's start with the first course. This is a rat stew with acorns. A quick disclaimer here, none of the animals you're going to see in this series have been killed. They've all been photoshopped. We thought it would be too much to go out in the streets trying to hunt for a rat. So yeah, they've been photoshopped. But actually the protagonist of the dish is not the rat, but these small seeds that we were able to find. After boiling them, we discovered that they behaved just like lentils. So we decided to make a sort of stew out of them. And then to boost the protein content, we add the rat and some acorns, because actually acorns are really high in proteins. Then for the second course, we have this roasted pigeon with wild urban mushrooms, let's call them. We made a sweet sauce out of some berries that we were able to find, and then glazed the pigeon with the sauce. And then finally, for the dessert, we have this carob truffles with jasmine tea. Actually, carob seeds were used in times of scarcity as a substitute of chocolate in its powder form. So when we found the seeds, we were really happy because we knew exactly what to do. And then we paired these truffles with some jasmine infusion. We found this beautiful big jasmine tree, so we collected some of the flowers to make this tea. So this would be the three recipes. We would like to talk about the styling of the pictures for a minute. From the very beginning, we knew that we wanted to leave this project to open interpretation. So we tried to set the food in the most appealing way, let's say, also recurring to some urban visual references to style the dishes. But yeah, we didn't want to make the food look unappealing or gross, but on the contrary, just leave the audience to come up with their own conclusions.
So these are the three recipes, and now we wonder how would common people thrive in this future scenario. And as we saw before, most of us can even tell when a fruit is on season, let alone hunting a rat or catching a pigeon. And probably nobody knows what kind of plants and fruits grow in their cities either. So that's the reason why we decided to design a prototype of our urban foraging guides. These guides would be like a source of information for the future urban foragers. And as you can see, they are divided by sections, such as maps with the location of specific ingredients, tips and tricks on how to locate and hunt the animals that populate the city, how to identify plants, and process ingredients to make the most out of them. So as you can see, we envision this guide to be a free resource for people that could be available in different cities, as some of the ingredients may change completely from one city to another.
Finally, we wanted to bring this project a bit closer to reality, rather than just letting it exist in the realm of pure speculation. So as a conclusion, we wanted to share with you 3 ideas on how to make urban foraging a reality today. Actually, most of them are already happening in one way or another, but it would be great to see them spread through our streets and become an integral part of our everyday lives. So first of all, we think it would be a really cool idea to swap the average city trees for fruit trees. This way they would give us something else than an allergy, as Mario can confirm. Secondly, some elements of street furniture could hold pots with aromatic herbs and other small plants that are not only useful in the kitchen, but would also help fighting those funky city aromas we are all familiar with. And finally, this is already happening in quite a few places, but it would be amazing if it became mainstream. We made the soil disappear from our cities in order to build buildings. So it would be nice if we could bring back this soil to every rooftop. So this way we could grow fruits, veggies, berries for self-consumption. So these are the main ideas we wanted to share with you today. Probably most of us have memories of going outside and forage ingredients and then cooking something delicious with them. And I'm sure we all remember how good and how empowering that felt. So we really encourage you to try it for yourself. We hope you enjoyed this talk and that it made you reflect on the relationship between the food and the cities we live in. It was a pleasure being part of this edition of the Dutch Design Week. And feel free to reach us online if you want to keep the conversation going. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And now you're here live. You are in Madrid at the moment, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Nice. I would like to ask, so you tried out now, let's say, 3 cities, 3 times in a speculative design way, of course. Did you use the same way with each city, or did you try a different approach?
Actually, we tried to make the recipes only in Barcelona.
Okay.
But then we tried to imagine how it would be like to recreate the same process in different cities. So yeah, maybe in the future, it would be nice to actually go urban foraging in Amsterdam, Berlin, somewhere else here in Madrid.
Yeah, actually, we wanted to go to Eindhoven, there live, so maybe try and forage there or something, but...
And how do you go about then? Because you kind of research, let's say, of course, the landscape of the city, but you also maybe look at the cultural heritage of the city and the food tradition of the city. can you tell us a little bit more about the process if you would have come to Eindhoven to explore this?
Well, I think the first time it was a bit more, how to say it, more like an adventure. We just went to the streets and foraged whatever we found there, and then actually figure out if it was edible or not. Or like quickly Googling our phones if what we had in front of us was edible. But maybe if we were able to go to Eindhoven, it would be nice to research first. And then go out with that.
Yeah, but I think that the things that you can forage in a city are not like the traditional foods that you can buy and eat in the city, so it's not the same.
And did you have the feeling that you had to kind of tap into different ideas, because as a designer, maybe you're not really used to doing something like this? I mean, maybe you have to become much more of an archaeologist or a chef to deal with this. I can imagine that you really had to kind of relearn many different things.
Totally.
But she is a food designer, so she knows more than me about food, so yeah. It wasn't that difficult.
As a food designer, the cooking part was covered. I think the hardest part was actually figure out how to process the ingredients to make them edible. For example, we learned that the acorns have to be like bleached before they can be edible, otherwise they have this toxin inside that make them kind of poisonous. So also for the desserts, for the truffles, that also has a bit to do with the heritage of Spain, actually, because as I said on the talk, the carob powder was a substitute of chocolate during the war, for example. So yeah, it was an interesting process.
And I think we're also spreading one of the recipes through our website to all our viewers. Is it the red stew, or which one is it?
No, it's an urban pizza, we decided to call it. And we try to make it as approachable as possible. And we also try to always offer the possibility to swap the ingredient that you have to forage for just the commercial version. So it's a pizza with chestnuts, nettle pesto, and some fresh dandelions on top.
And it's based on the urban foraging of Madrid, or not a specific city?
Not a specific city. We try to choose the ingredients according to like how many of them could be found in most places, in most cities.
Yeah.
So that's why that was like the starting point of this pizza, to be approachable from every country and every city.
Nice. Maybe my last question, is the project going to be on show anywhere soon? Where can we see it, apart from on your website?
Well, actually, it's going to be on Future.
True.
It's going to be online as well, because of COVID, obviously. But yeah, you can check out the project also in Future, Barcelona. And it will be launched, I think, in the coming days.
Yeah, actually, it's more or less the same days.
Very nice. Thanks so much for presenting the work. Again, also, we hope to receive you in Eindhoven next year if we have a physical Dutch Design Week again. And it would be great if you can do some urban foraging here. And it would be very curious what you find and what recipes you make of that. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. We're going to switch to our last guests of today, Mariana Pestana. And let's see, we have the whole curatorial team, or the two people of the curatorial team from the Istanbul Biennale. Billy Muraben as well. I'm sure I pronounced the name wrong. Can you guys hear me somewhere? Are you in the Zoom?
Hi. Yes.
Hi.
I can hear you.
How do I pronounce your names before I make any other big mistakes?
Mine is very difficult. It's Mariana Pestana.
Mariana Pestana. And Billy?
I'm Billy Muraben.
Muraben, good. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have about 15 minutes to talk about the Biennale. I think at the very moment you are in the middle of the Istanbul Design Biennale, so I thank you first of all very much for the time that you spent with us here today. The Biennale's main theme is Empathy Revisited, which I think also connects very much to the theme that we have this year, which is the new intimacy. And the undertitle is Design for More Than One. The Biennale brings together ideas and projects that seek to define a new role for design based on empathy. And if I'm correct, one of the starting points was actually the kitchen, which is probably the place I would say when you think of design for more than one. I'm curious if that is true, that you really started with the starting point of the kitchen and how you imagined it to really unfold in the Biennale.
Well, yes, the biennial food is a very important theme throughout all of our programs. The biennial opened already 3 days ago on the 15th,
nice.
But it's going to be a slow developing program until the spring of 2021, and it's divided into 4 main lines of programming. One is the Critical Cooking Show, which is a live element, a digital program that's available every Sunday. A new episode is released, and these are films developed by architects, designers, thinkers, activists, that hopefully will turn you into a critical cook.
Nice. Is it also in
Then
the
there is
presentation
a
you
second
prepared,
line
or
sorry?
is it also within the presentation that you prepared?
Yes. Yes, we will speak about those 4 programs.
You could also run it by the presentation if you like, even though I do like the conversation.
Yeah, sure.
Can you see the presentation?
I can't actually see the presentation right now.
Yeah, the Revolution wood stove.
Okay, perfect. So the Revolution wood stove is the first of the projects we're talking about. And it's one of the new civic rituals, which are interventions that are spread across the city. And they rehearse new kinds of encounter. And each of them is hosted by a different community group and a particular site within the city that's specific to their intentions or use. And this should be a film of the stove.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, great.
This is at the
Perfect.
Bosphorus.
Yeah, exactly. So this is at Karaköy Pier on the European side. And it's hosted by Urban Co-op. And it was designed by architecture practice Bits to Atoms.
And it was specifically
within the design collective.
For the Design Biennale?
No, it was created for the protests in Lebanon in 2019.
Okay.
But it was designed as a kind of open source design where you can just download the CAD file from the designers.
Nice.
And this particular stove was made in Istanbul. And it's designed using a centuries-old technique known as wedge joinery. And it's basically laser cut, essentially, from steel. So far it's already been installed for about a week now, and it's being used by local tea sellers, by people hanging out in the area, and it'll be activated by our young curators group who are working with local groups and places around the city who could make use of it in some way.
And it will remain active when the Biennale is finished, even?
Yes, exactly. That's
Yes.
the intention. It will stay in the city.
Good.
As I mentioned, the program started now in October, but it extends until the spring of next year. And in April, we will launch 5 more of these new civic rituals. One of them is by a multidisciplinary artist, let's call it like that, Orkan Telhan, and the architecture studio Eli. and they are doing a project called Microbial Fruits of Istanbul. They have been researching and collecting soil from across all the urban gardens of the city and investigating the stories that we can learn about this microbial life that forms the communities of these gardens. We'll create a platform to share the stories that they will find about these microbial communities, and also a fermentation kit so that each visitor can continue to keep that culture alive in their boza or their yogurt or whatever they decide to do with the culture at home.
So the next project is The Cosmogony of Racial Capitalism by architect and theorist Dele Adeyemo, which was presented at the Library of Land and Sea at Art Culture. And that's where we're displaying research projects by designers and theorists that invite people to rethink concepts of the Mediterranean. And this project is a really good example of that. It's a design-led investigation into the material cultures present at the birth of capitalism and its emergence out of the relations of power forged in the integrated networks of sugarcane plantations. And it takes as the point of departure the meeting between the Portuguese and the Edo people in the Kingdom of Benin, which is a leading society in West Africa among the Yoruba. And in the project, Adeyemo recovers long-neglected histories that narrate the extension of the Mediterranean world to the Guinea coast. Oh, my connection's lost from the clicker.
I'll ask them to go to the next slide.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Material histories.
Yeah. Also at the Library of Land and Sea, project by Counterspace, who are a Johannesburg-based practice. And this project looked at recipes as archives of culture, of migration, and connects recipes and the ingredients in recipes with histories, with landscapes. So it's a project that is composed of a series of posters that can be folded and opened in different ways. The posters are almost like the depository of the research that was developed on specific ingredients in the Saharan region. And so they always depart from a recipe, but then analyze various scales involved in a recipe, from the chemical scale of the ingredients that compose it to the landscapes that that ingredient is going to transform, or the lives and the stories of the people who are involved in the many parts of the narrative that is that recipe. So here you can see an image of the installation at Art Culture.
Oh, nice.
And the next project is Satellite Kitchens by Thierry Lab, which you should be able to see now.
Yes.
And it's a research project by an initiative and an open platform that explores multicultural heritage related to local technologies, gastronomy and culture specific to rural communities in northwestern Greece. And this project really investigates the kitchen as a space of assembly, resistance, empowerment and care. And what we're really encouraging is that people who visit the library will be able to go through these documents, postcards, posters, and really look into the details of the kind of lives of those kitchens.
Yeah, what's important to say is also that these projects, they are a starting point and they develop until sort of the next year. We to show the starting point here in Istanbul, but then they have a life of their own that we hope to accompany and showcase. The third, let's say, program that we are presenting to you today is the Critical Cooking Show, the one I mentioned at the beginning. And these are a series of films that are broadcast weekly at empathyrevisited.ikcv.org in our channel. but also at efflux architecture. A selection of films. This one is As Above, So Below. It's a really kind of beautiful depiction of microscopic images of food. This is what you see, for example, in the image. But the authors of the project consider the macro and the micro scales of our world as important players, both scales, in how empathy is exercised, not just towards different bodies, but also across time, across different dimensions. And so this film makes connections between specific foods and agricultural rituals, between religion, between sort of cosmologies, and specific foods and ingredients. I think we have a few more that we'd like to show you.
Nice.
Yeah. So the second one is Cooking with Stories by design researchers Depatriarchize Design, Maya El-Bakri, and filmmaker Romy Lee. And it's an experimental visual document that embraces overlooked, invisible, marginalized design, personal memories, and collections of seemingly mundane kitchen tools which have been brought to Europe upon emigrating from the Swana region, which is Southwest Asia and North Africa, and another way of referring to the Middle East. So memories are brought to life, overlooked diasporic narratives unfold, and it really offers a review of a rich landscape instead of binaries that are present in both cooking and design. So whether that's haute cuisine and home cooking, or the kind of capital letter term of design versus craft.
And another example is Let Us Heal Together. It's a project that was developed during the pandemic. It's a film by Zuri Kamit Souza, and it's almost like a guided meditation for you. You know, if you think of the recipe here, the recipe would be to invite you, the instruction would be for you to get out and engage with the nature that you find sort of nearby your house or your context, and reconsider how your own time may tune in or sort of adapt to more the times of nature, right, which are slower, which are very different from our fast-paced rhythms in the city. And Zuri filmed this in Marseille during lockdown. So it's a really, it's a very generous invitation.
Incredible projects, really beautiful. I think we have about 2 more minutes, maybe for 1 or 2 questions. Sorry for the time rush. First of all, I'd like to say I think it's great to see how much of the works are really physical. In this age of digitalization and virtual biennales, I think it's really great to see something tangible. So compliments on that. Just maybe my last question is that it seems that each project seems to kind of use food or the kitchen as a starting point, but each time going really beyond that. I'm curious if that was a conscious choice or if it just kind of came about how you were making the program.
Yeah, maybe Billy will have a different answer, and it would be nice to hear from her as well. I think that food is the most important subject of our time. It's an essential subject to consider, especially in face of the climate crisis. But also, I think food allows us to think about communities of different scales. And here, you know, in Istanbul at the biennial, we wanted to think about how we can engage emotionally with the world around us. Even though we know that we live in a climate crisis, we've become somehow immune to the numbers, the data, etc. Yeah. And so our theme, empathy, was because really had this aim to say that design allows us to engage emotionally with the world around us, and through food, I think we can definitely do that. First of all, because food is a subject that everyone cares about in one way or another, but also food just allows us to think sort of across scales, from the ingredients to the landscapes that are transformed by those ingredients, and and design can play a very important role there.
Billy, you'd like to add to that?
Billy, what did you say?
I think it's mainly that food really relates to connection in so many different ways, whether it's connecting, as Mariana was saying, across different scales and across, I guess, from land and growth to food distribution and all of these networks that are being interrogated in quite an important way at the moment, but also in terms of really connecting with each other, connecting in the space. And as you were saying, it connects to actually physical interaction and be able to enjoy something together with other people. And I think the tangibility of it is really important, particularly at the moment.
Couldn't agree with you more, to say the truth. Thank you so much in this digital way. Again, my compliments on the Biennale. Good luck with the coming days, weeks. And I hope to see you either in Eindhoven or in Istanbul to share thoughts and maybe some food as well. So thank you and good luck.
Thank you. Bye.
This was another episode of the Food Embassy in English this time. The rest of our episodes are all in Dutch, and you can see them again on ddw.nl, worlddesignembassy's.com. Thank you so much for looking. Until next time. Thank you.